And red. Awesome. Well, hello, students. Welcome to another day of art. As you can see, I've got someone on here with me. This is my dear friend, Chelsea. She lives in Los Angeles, California, and she is a comic book designer and a cartoonist. So yeah, Chelsea's our visiting artist today. Please give her your time and respect. And if y'all have any questions at the end, I'll email them to Chelsea and she can answer them. So thanks for joining us, Chelsea.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and start sharing with us whatever you want about your career and your artwork. I'm so excited to learn more as well.
Great. Well, I am 31 years old. I grew up in Southern California. My family is just a bunch of normal people. They are, my dad works at Costco. My mom works at a retirement home. And, not super creative people themselves, but they always really, really supported me. And I always expressed myself through comics and drawing. I used to make little comics for my friends for their birthday, or I'd make a painting for my grandpa for Christmas or something. And so I was kind of like the family artist. So I'm sure a lot of you get kind of the same remarks. People, they'll be like, oh, thank you. Art makes people happy. So if you feel happy when you do art and then you feel really happy when you give art to people, I would really suggest being an artist when you grow up.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion. I love the way you put that. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Because it can be really hard to navigate whether you want to be an artist. Because a lot of people will say there's no money in art. It's hard to make a living doing art. While I do feel like those people have your best interest at heart, I do think that you can probably make money doing whatever you want as long as you put your mind to it and you're prepared and this is the thing you love. I think the most important thing is that you really, really love it, because even if you're doing some sort of other job or you just need to make ends meet some other way, you're going to keep making art regardless, because that's who you are. So it can only help you to achieve those goals like later in life. Even if you're not an artist professionally all the time, you can become an artist later on. And it can really work out either way. So
I love that.
The reason I got a degree in design is because my parents were worried that I wouldn't make enough money doing art. So design is just a more marketable version of art, I would say. It's just basically every sort of business in the world needs a designer to make their products look pretty and kind of keep it all consistent. So if you are a creative person, even if you don't really enjoy the physical act of drawing or painting, you could be a really great designer. It just takes a certain eye and like a love of color and detail, and art and design really go together that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I design comic books, like Lacey said. So, or Mrs. What Miss?
But it's okay. They call me Lacey. I allow them to call me Miss Lacey too. So you're
okay.
Fine. About it, girl. Don't worry.
Miss Lacey.
I know I've got artist friends that we're interviewing, so you're all good.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So I have some examples here. This is a comic that I did recently. It's a Garfield snack pack.
Oh, I love it.
So
further in the screen so we can see.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome, Chelsea.
And you can see there's a little picture of him on the back here.
He's carrying a refrigerator in his backpack.
Yes.
Love it. Did you do that?
Yeah. So what
Hmm.
designers will usually do is they'll receive assets. So in this case, I got assets from the Garfield company.
So
So
what
they
are assets, Chelsea?
assets are essentially like the logo, the artwork,
Hmm.
um, like this. I cut him out of like a pre-existing piece of art and then put him back here with these words and the colored background and the barcode and stuff.
Okay.
Um, so basically, like, this is kind of the type of stuff that a designer would do. Like, I took some line art of lasagnas and made a pattern out of it.
That's amazing.
And then yeah, and then so the pattern is like the end papers of the book. And then this picture of Garfield, I blew it up and redrew it so that it would be high res enough to print.
Okay. Okay.
And then arranged it this way so that it looks good for like a chapter header.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so, and just stuff like this where you have
Mm.
I drew these pictures of like foods, I
Yeah.
guess, a hamburger and
Love
stuff.
it. Yum. I'm hungry now.
I know, me too. It's dangerous. And then you just use that artwork to kind of introduce a pre-existing, like a book, if you
Okay.
will.
Yeah.
So then you get into the actual comic,
Whoa.
and I would receive the artwork, the colors, as their own separate files, and then the letters, the dialogue, as their own separate files. And then I put them together to make the book.
Awesome. So the person who's creating the images, is that typically a different job than say you who's putting the images together there?
Right. So I'm also a cartoonist.
Okay.
So the cartoonist would be the person actually drawing the comic that we're publishing.
Cool.
So yeah, so there you have a writer, you have an artist, you have a letterer, and they're all doing completely separate jobs, but they're working together to make a whole story.
Cool. So you got to do both with this one because you created some of those pages with the food and then you also put together the layouts of another cartoonist.
Yes.
Cool. That's awesome, Chelsea.
Yeah, I really love it. So I will show you just real quick the process here. Let me get rid of these things. All right. So I will share my window.
You're recording this too.
Okay.
I have too many and it would look really unorganized.
I totally understand. So here is my comic that I designed top to bottom here.
Wow.
So this is Forever Home. This is a creator that I worked with. So there are no pre-made assets in the sense that the art is all hers, but I had to make the logo. I had to make the overall aesthetic of the book. So I actually had to draw this whole spread here.
Wow.
Based on kind of the interior look of the house that is featured in this book. Here's the outside of it.
Okay.
So let me share a different thing with you.
That's so cool though.
I really love it. Let me get this other window now.
Perfect.
All right, so here is the actual spread here. Can you see it?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. So it is nothing right now.
It's a pretty blue background.
Yeah, so I took the color of the wallpaper that is in the house, and I started just drawing the line art. So there's the baseboard, the mantle, all the family pictures and whatnot. And then I started coloring it in just to, and just really matching the artist, the interiors of the actual story, like
Okay.
just gleaning what I could from it
Yeah.
and building my own version here.
I love it.
And these are what I like to call flats.
Okay.
It just means it's the most basic version of like the colors. There's not there, as you can see, the shading is it's just kind of blocky and not super detailed, and that's kind of the way you want it for a clean design like this one.
Awesome.
So yeah, and so I just made this background, and then I came over here and I cut out some of the characters from the book and just started plugging them into this background here.
Cute.
So I got some music notes, there's a mic, and then
It.
there's the ghost.
Cool.
Yeah, so design is basically taking creating what you need to create a good kind of compelling visual for what you're trying to communicate. And then if needed, taking assets from other artists or people that you're working for and kind of plugging them into the appropriate places and making it look good and clean. Yeah.
Real quick, just because this is going to be a question I'm going to have them answer.
Okay.
Do you mind repeating one last time what assets are? Because that's just a good new term for them.
Assets are artwork or files that you will receive from an outside stakeholder in the project, and you will need to incorporate it into the design. So for example, if you're making a business card for a client, the assets they should send you are like their logo, the copy, like what they want the card to say, things like that they want included. So part of a designer's job is actually organizing those assets in a way that they are readily available and up to the standards of the printer that you will be sending them to.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So would this be an okay answer, just like for them to answer, like, so an asset is essentially the artwork and information you receive from the company who's hiring you to do the work?
Yep. That's perfect.
Cool. Okay. So students, either anything Chelsea said or what I just explained is the answer.
Yes.
I was just, in teacher terms, it's like, okay, how can they type this, to get, but thank you so much. That's really, like, I didn't even know that. So thanks for that.
Oh yeah, of course. My pleasure. And it is like totally a thing that you do not learn is important until you become a designer and you're like, oh, this is a whole separate job on its own, just keeping track of all these assets.
Right. Well, my little bit of design background, as you know, is fashion. And so we're all in-house. We didn't have people send us things. Like, we were a design house. And so that's why it's new for me, because like the designer as her assistant, she would just tell me what to fix and do.
Yes.
But we just didn't use that terminology. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. And yes, it's interesting that you bring up like in-house design too, because where I work, it's called Boom Studios, and we are probably one of the only comic book publishers that has an in-house design team. And what that means is they are one of the only comic book publishers that hires designers to work in their offices solely to design books.
Wow.
Yeah. So usually an editor is taking on that job, which is unfortunately the reason you see a lot of very bad design in comic books.
Okay. Yep.
So yeah, we really pride ourselves on making beautiful things. And in that vein too, I would just say that design is very multi-tiered. You can become a graphic designer and end up doing any number of completely different things. You don't have to be a book designer. You don't have to be a cartoonist or an illustrator. I just brought this to share too. It's it's big.
That's awesome. Is that Power
Uh,
Rangers helmets?
yes, it's Power Rangers, and it's a short box, which is what holds comic books.
Oh, cool.
And you see on the
Yes, Boom Studios.
Boom Studios.
So cool.
Yeah.
Did you design that?
Yeah, so I designed it just as a comic book convention exclusive.
Hmm.
And that would be an example of packaging design, which
Yeah.
is just, it's exactly what it sounds like. You design the packages that things come in,
Yeah.
and you would be very surprised how many packaging designers need to exist for products to really get to market. And so it can be short boxes, it can be food packages, it can be like literally anything.
Yeah.
Toy packaging. One of my friends is actually a toy designer at Disney,
Wow.
so he designs all of the like his latest project was doing all the Frozen dolls.
Oh,
So
cool.
he designed all the dolls, he designed their clothes and
Yeah.
what their clothes were made out of. He designed all the packaging.
Mm.
So you can work, I mean, for Mattel or Hasbro, Disney, doing toy design, book design, um, park design. Like if you want to become an environmental designer and design like actual places, you
Oh,
can do that.
yeah.
So yeah, there's really a whole lot of branches of design that you can get into, and it's really just what you're most interested in and what you enjoy doing, and you can make those choices as you go along. So it's great.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, and then one thing that we've talked about just personally, Chelsea, is especially in movies, the few movies that even have designers, you see a lot of like Caucasian and white people. Is that
Yeah.
what the design world really looks like? And what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah. So design, I would say that design as a whole is a very diverse
Mm,
place now.
cool.
Um, it historically hasn't been at all.
Mm,
And especially in the comic book industry, I'd say white males have dominated pretty much every aspect for decades.
wow.
And yes, unfortunate. Um, but it,
Everybody should be able to be a part of it, right?
yeah, and that's kind of the interesting thing about comics in particular is that the medium so often tells stories about, you know, so-called people who are different, right? Like the
Mm,
X-Men, Spider-Man, people who were like nerds or outcasts, right? And but they became heroes. And so I think that the comic book industry was already leaning towards this um, narrative of, okay, so people are different or people are marginalized or you know, because of who they are,
mm,
but despite that they overcome
mm.
and they can become like the best of us, right? They can become our heroes and our allies and the people who fight for us. So um, yeah, it's definitely changed a lot, especially in the past 10 years. Just highlighting like the Black Panther series.
Yeah.
It started changing in 2016 when Ta-Nehisi Coates
Yeah. Yeah.
started an African American author. He started writing the Black Panther series in 2016. And then in 2018, he actually started writing for Captain America,
Awesome.
which is wild because Captain America is a white superhero, and it was very heartening to see them kind of be like, oh, you know what, this person has a different perspective. Let's get his
Mhm.
voice in over here as well. And then I don't know if you've heard of Ms. Marvel,
Yeah.
but she has again historically been just a white woman, and now she is a teenage Muslim girl who lives in Jersey City, and she is written by two Muslim women who are named Willow Wilson and Sana Amanat. They are wonderful.
Yeah.
And they have been writing that comic since 2013, and it is a bestseller.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then, of course, we all know Miles Morales became Spider-Man in 2011.
Yeah.
And he is absolutely a dream. Wonderful. Great to see it. Like, wonderful. Just makes my heart sing to see another brown person out there. So,
yeah. Absolutely.
And then I would say, too, that, just because there's a legacy character that exists, like, legacy characters are basically just characters that their comic book series have been going for decades. Okay. And because of that, it doesn't typically force much change.
So like Batman, Superman, those like very long-standing superheroes.
Exactly. Okay. Like they've been around since the 20s.
Yeah.
So they have been traditionally white. And kind of, throughout history, their sidekicks have been people of color or like women of color. And it's just like in Spates, kind of like Jubilee of the X-Men. She was like a Chinese American girl, or like Falcon is a black man, which is great. But recently, legacy superheroes, just like we were talking about Spider-Man, traditionally a white hero, has been remade to include more diverse characters because you can. Why not?
Right? That's so cool. Mm-hmm. I love that. Well, thanks, Chelsea. Is there any last little tidbits or tips or anything you want to share with us last?
Yeah. I'll definitely get into the thing we talked about earlier, but I also wanted to encourage, like, of course, like everyone is welcome in comics, and now they are. But I would just like to encourage women of color. We still need you. Still very much looking for you, wanting you to come be an artist and a designer. And honestly, like, data shows that in America, especially, women are the majority of comic book fans under 18. So that means that y'all are going to come up and you will be the people who are mostly reading comic books. So if you haven't checked out comic books, please do start reading them. But also just know that you should be the people making those books because you will be the ones reading them.
Yeah. What a great point and cool statistic to share. Thanks for that, Chelsea.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not that girls need to be socialized into liking comic books. It's that they have to be socialized out of thinking that comic books are not for them. Like the comic book world has always kind of implied that women shouldn't read comics because it's for boys and men and like nerds. And I would like to say very much that is not true at all.
Yes, I love that.
Some of the best women, some of the best graphic novels, like the top selling graphic novels right that now, have been written by women. Raina Telgemeier, she is actually the top ranking creator in the US. Like, she makes the most money, and she is the most successful just in terms of like how relatable her stuff is. She makes exclusively comics, and she is a woman, and it's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to come back to how much a designer makes, which is very important.
That's a question that you students had for our last design and what she makes. And I'll be getting back to y'all with that too, but Chelsea's more than willing to share that with us as well.
Yeah. So I personally make a little bit over $17 an hour, which in LA is not super fancy. I definitely live on my own. Like, I'm not struggling. But I just applied for a job with Disney doing exactly what I do now, except just regular books instead of comic books. And it pays about $25 an hour.
Awesome.
And then,
Like what, an $8 pay raise?
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I think what I make now is around 35,000 a year, and that would be like 40,000.
Okay.
And then I know that, and I've only been working in this industry for 4 years. So I know that people who continue to work for like 10, 15, 20, they make a lot more, and they have families and houses, and it's fully sustainable. The person that I was talking about earlier, my friend who's a production artist at Disney, he designs toys. That's all he's done for 25 years, and he is living it up. So
That's awesome. He's doing fine financially and doing very well.
yeah, definitely. And he's a person of color too. He's Filipino. And he says Disney treats them really well. So there's definitely a ton of opportunities in this field. I know that everyone says it's like oversaturated. That's all I heard during college was like, oh, it's so competitive, it's oversaturated, and whatever. I mean,
do it right.
Yeah, it's just complete. Yeah, it's complete nonsense. As long as you, like I said before, if this is what you want to do, this is what you're going to do. So you just have to make that decision and keep going, because everyone's road to their favorite job is completely roundabout and almost never a straight line. I worked at all sorts of very strange places before I worked here, and they were fine jobs, but they weren't what I wanted to do. But it all led up to this. I needed to have those jobs to know how to do this job. So just take everything as a learning experience, because you will always learn as long as you have a good attitude. So
that's awesome. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop our recording here, but thank you for joining us.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real joy. And I wish you young artists all the best.
Yay!